Hi! Within this section, we're going to focus on system penetration testing. We're going to see how to scan for open ports, how to scan for vulnerabilities within systems, and how to get access using that vulnerability. And bear in mind that up until now we have been working on the same network, but following this section, these attacks are not valid only in the same network but also for the external networks as well. So you can do these attacks, you can do these scans for the computers that are outside of your network, that are outside of your country even. And later on, we will have a dedicated section focusing on these external attacks as well. So you will need to do some configuration in order to use these attacks on the external network. But for test purposes, with the sections, we are going to use NAT network again. But it doesn't mean they are valid only with inside network, but we can also use them outside of network as well. So now, if you're ready, let's get started.
Hi, within this section, we're going to focus on system penetration testing. We're going to do some things in order to gain access to the computer. Remember what hacking is about. Hackers try to find vulnerabilities, weaknesses in systems, and they try to find some ways to exploit those weaknesses, exploit those vulnerabilities in order to gain unauthorized access. And that's what we're going to do within this section. Actually, we can try to penetrate into the systems with going after the system itself. We can look for ports, we can look for malicious softwares, we can look for some misconfigured softwares in order to gain access. But also in the following sections, we're going to attack to the users. Maybe this is kind of a misleading subject because eventually we will be attacking to the computer itself, but in the social engineering part, we will send some files like backdoors, trojans, some malicious files that will be opened by user, that will require interaction by the user in order for us to gain access. But in this section, we're focusing on the system misconfiguration. We're focusing on the open ports, misconfigured softwares, unupdated softwares in order to gain access. So this section is important. We're going to learn the basics of the penetration testing. We're going to have some examples of basic vulnerabilities and ways to exploit them in order to gain access and hack into the target computer. And at this point, you will think that what if the target computer doesn't have these vulnerabilities? Don't worry, in the following sections we will focus on these subjects, these issues as well. But in the section, we're going to focus on vulnerabilities that exists in a current system. And we're going to use some system called Metasploitable within this section. So this is again a virtual machine and it is designed to be hacked. It has some certain vulnerabilities, and this is designed for ethical hackers to test and improve their skills. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture, we're going to start searching for vulnerabilities within systems. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can install Metasploitable machine as a virtual machine on our host computer. In order to do that, let's go to Google and search for Metasploitable virtual machine. Okay, so you can just type Metasploitable download because everyone uses Metasploitable as a virtual machine, because as I said before, this system is actually designed to be hacked. So I have various results in here, and Metasploitable is actually brought us by this Rapid7 company, and you can download it from the sourceforge.net as well, but I'm going to show you both in order to be safe. Because Rapid7 at this moment actually asks us to complete this form regarding our name, last name, job title, company, and work phone or work email. So this is a lot thing to do. So I tested this sourceforge.net as well, and it turns out that this is safe as well. So you can download it from filling out this form in here, or you can directly go to sourceforge.net in order to download this virtual machine file. And remember, Metasploitable is brought us by Rapid7, and we're going to see and we're going to use Rapid7 web page within this section a lot, because we have some vulnerability exploit database in Rapid7. But for right now, I'm going to sourceforge.net and I'm going to download this Metasploitable 2.0 version. Okay, and I believe there are other versions as well, but we are working with Metasploitable 2.0 version right now, so make sure that you're downloading it from here or there, but the version must be 2.0 in order to follow this course. So after you download this, I have already downloaded it in order not to make you wait, of course. You can go to your downloads folder, and we're going to import this by clicking new in here. Okay, and we have to choose a name for ourselves, and I'm just going to name this Metasploitable, and as type I will choose Linux, and the version will be Ubuntu 64-bit. So it will ask me to allocate some RAM, and maybe you remember that we have allocated 1 GB for Kali. 1 GB is enough for this Metasploitable as well, and in here we will use the existing thing, okay, existing VMDK file, and you have to find your downloaded folder and choose this VMDK file that you have downloaded. So this is a little bit different than before. We didn't go through the settings in Kali Linux or Windows, but Metasploitable asks us to download an ISO file, VMDK file, so we have to complete it this way. And then later on, I will just start this and try to log into my MSF admin account. I will show you, don't worry. And I think I missed the step to put this in the NAT network, but later on I will do that. And remember, we have to be on the same network with this Metasploitable, because we're not going to put this online, because this is a vulnerable machine. We don't want this to be online. So the username is msfadmin, and the password is the same thing, msfadmin. Okay, so write this and hit enter, and it will open your system for you. Right now, if I say ls, it will show me this vulnerable file. I can type pwd to see the current working directory, then go to this vulnerable folder and just type ls to go and browse those files. Like I have this TikiWiki, MySQL, Samba. These are some services running on this Metasploitable machine that we're going to see later, that we're going to exploit and hack into later. You can try to run ifconfig to see if you really have an ETH0 connection in here. As you can see, I have one. If you don't, you have to go to settings, as I said before, and go to network and put this into NAT network. Okay, so let me put it into NAT network and say okay right now, and try to run reboot, because I need to close this down and open it one more time. Let me run sudo reboot, it will ask me for password. Password is MSF admin, and it will reboot the machine. Of course, I could have just shut it down and started from the beginning as well. Why I'm doing this? Because I want the system to get a local IP from NAT network. I don't plan to connect to the internet or something, but they have to be on the same network in order for me to reach these metasploitable services from Kali Linux machine. So let me run msf admin, and run ifconfig one more time. Now I have the 10.02.5 IP address. This is a NAT network address, so I'm on the same network. So we are simulating a web server in here, okay? So think of this like a outside network penetration testing, but as simulating purposes, for test purposes, this will be on the NAT network. Of course, we can do what we are going to learn within this section for outside attacks as well, but for right now we're going to do some tests in the NAT network. So let's stop here and start doing tests in the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to discuss how we can find the vulnerabilities that are hidden inside our metasploitable machine that we have installed in the previous lecture. So I have now metasploitable and Kali Linux running on the NAT network. So we gathered the local IPs from NAT network in the previous section. So my metasploitable has the IP of 10.02.5 and my Kali machine has the IP of 10.02.15. Of course, we can get it from NetDiscover as well. In fact, in order to find the vulnerabilities, we're going to use Nmap, but before we do that, I want to make sure that my two computers are on the same network and can see each other. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ping the other machine. So I can ping google.com, you know? So we did it before. We did it to test to internet connection, right? So I can just run ping google.com and see that I have a real connection. I can send a request and I can get responses back from Google. And I can do that to metasploitable machine as well. So since I have metasploitable on the same network, I can just ping 10.02.5 to see if I can send a request and get a response back. And don't be confused. We can use this Nmap, we can use this vulnerability thing in the outside network as well. If this wasn't a metasploitable, but rather a web server in another complete different another IP, then I could have just pinged that IP and I could have run Nmap scan to that IP as well. But since they are on the same NAT network, I have to be sure that they can see each other. So if I ping 10.02.5 right now, it will send some request and it will get a response back from metasploitable. So I'm now certain that metasploitable can be reached from Kali Linux, and in fact I can do vice versa from metasploitable as well. So it can ping the Kali Linux. And metasploitable actually runs a web server in here, okay? So if I go to my browser and try to browse 10.02.5, then I will see a web page, okay? So this is like Apache server that we have run in our Kali Linux. And here we see some pages like phpMyAdmin, Matilda, DVWA. If you click on one of them, it will take you a website called Matilda, for instance, and this is a vulnerable execution. So we're going to try and find the vulnerabilities that are hidden inside of these web pages. And you can browse those web pages from Metasploitable with ls and cd commands as well. So let me open ZenMap one more time And if you remember, we did it back in the net discovery section when we tried to gather the information regarding our own network. But this time I'm going to target 10.025 rather than my whole network, okay? I'm going to run an intent scan. And again, you can run this attack on outside networks as well. So this section is not dedicated to network attacks. We can use the same techniques for outside network attacks as well. And I believe this is now getting some information. It's pinging the 10.025 and it's trying to find the open port and an extensive information regarding those open ports. As you might remember, we got the versions, we got some explanations regarding those versions, and we got some possible vulnerability explanations as well when we did quick plus scan. So maybe you may want to pause the video and get back after it completes. So now it's completed for me, and as you can see, I got a lot of results back from Metasploitable. The next thing to do is actually read the whole thing, okay? If you deal with a real penetration testing, then you can thoroughly read this and try to get some real information out of this. As you can see, we discovered a lot of open ports and we have them in here. So we have like 3206, 80, 5900, 21, 23, 53, and at this point you don't know what those ports are, right? So I have showed you a summary of ports before, but it was nothing. You have to dig deeper in order to understand what's going on. And you have those information down here. As you can see, now we have the port, we have the state, whether it's open or closed, we have the service, and most importantly, we have the version as well. So we have a running FTP service in here, and we have the version of VSFTPD, and as you can see, there is a warning here. It says that anonymous FTP login allowed. So it gives us a possible vulnerability to exploit actually. So since this allows us to connect anonymously, we can use any FTP connection to just hack into those machines. So here we have other information as well, like we have a telnet going on, we have a mail server in here, and we have some vulnerabilities regarding to that server as well. So basically you need to read all of this and then come up with an idea, come up with a port to dig deeper again, and then try to exploit those vulnerabilities to gain unauthorized access. That's what hackers do. And we're going to do that in the following lectures. We're going to Google one of the vulnerabilities, one of the versions, and try to gather some information from some exploit databases and from Rapid7 webpage that we have seen before as well. So this gives you a lot of information, and this is not generally the case since Metasploitable has a lot of vulnerabilities built in intentionally. We have a lot of results, but generally you will have less and you will have less chance to hack into. So let's stop here and continue with our first hacking in the next lecture. Hi, within this lecture we're going to have our first hacking experience in the system pen testing section. So we have run a map against our target, against our Metasploitable machine, and we have the results in here, and we're going to use those results to come up with a strategy. Okay, as you can see, we have this first port opening here, which is 21 FTP, and it says that anonymous FTP login allowed. So there is clearly something wrong in here, and there is clearly a way to exploit this, and we will try it. So best way to deal with this kind of situation is that research this thing and find out a solution. Since we believe there is actually a vulnerability in this case, we have to find a way to exploit it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy all of this information and try to find some exploit regarding to those information in exploit databases. So basically there are a lot of vulnerabilities in here, and hackers actually write some exploit codes in order to leverage these weaknesses and gather some access to ourselves. And we cannot know how to write exploits at this moment since this is not a programming course, but we can find them online. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities and there are a lot of exploits that are ready for us to use already. And they are stored in something called exploit databases. We can surely use those exploit databases and find our related exploit to leverage it and gain access. And we have a tool called Metasploit in Kali Linux, and this is most popular ethical hacking tool of all time. So this is a penetration system testing tool, and you can reach it within Kali Linux by opening a terminal and running MSF console. Okay, and as you might guess, Metasploitable and Metasploit belong to the same company, so we can easily find some exploits in Rapid7 database and use those exploits in MSF console easily, freely. Okay, so this is MSF console, and this is the Metasploit framework itself. As you can see, there are like more than 1000 exploits at this moment, and this is updated daily, so maybe you can see something like 2000, 3000, 4000 when you open it. Okay, and I'm going to try and search for this version for our 21 open port and try to find some exploits in Rapid7 database and try to use those exploits within MSF console. So let me search for this version and exploit. So let me maximize this window here, okay, so we can see it better. And as you can see, the first result is actually the rapid7.com. So we have other results as well, like exploitdb.com. But I'm going to go with Rapid7 in order to be consistent, since I'm going to use MSF console anyway. And this is an exploit database looks like. Okay, so it generally explains the exploit, explains the vulnerability in here. It says that there is a malicious backdoor hidden inside of this version, and this is later on removed on 2011, and if somebody doesn't change or doesn't update its tools, as you can see, it can be dangerous. And other than that, other than the general information, we have a module name in here. By using this module name, you can actually reach this exploit inside of MSF console. So you can easily exploit vulnerabilities with Metasploit by using these modules. And how do you do that? Let me show you. If you open MSF console, if you open the Metasploit framework, you can say use and then the module name. So let me paste this module name that we have copied, and all you have to do is just hit enter. Once you hit enter, it opens, it enters inside of that particular exploit. As you can see, this is now VSFTPD backdoor module. So we are now in the module itself. We can change the settings of this module and we can try to exploit the vulnerability with this module at this moment. So if you say show options and hit enter, it will show you the settings of that particular module. As you can see, there are two settings only. we have the R host and we have the R port. And as you might remember, the port was 21, so the R port is actually true. And of course, we have to specify the host as well. And host in this case is the IP address of our victim. And R stands for remote. Okay, if you see L host, for example, it stands for localhost. And it generally means that your own IP. But in here, we're going to set our host to be 10.02.5 and hit enter, which is our metasploitable machine. If I say show options one more time, then it will show me that our host is set to 10.02.5 and our port was already 21, so we are good to go. So there were only 2 options to complete, and now we have completed those options. And we can just run this exploit. We can just try to connect to the victim machine by running run or exploit in here. So I will say exploit and hit enter. And it will try to connect to that host 10.02.5 with the codes, with the exploit codes that are built in the Metasploit, and try to hack in that computer. And as you can see, we have a session open. It means that we now hacked into the Metasploitable machine. Now we have a running session in here, and we can run some commands on Metasploitable from Kali Linux. So let me run pwd. As you can see, I think we are in the root. So if I say ls, then I will see the available folders in here. So let me run id to see the id. As you can see, this is root account and we are in. If I say uname, it will give me Linux. And we can try to browse those folders as well, right? So let me try to go to home, for instance, and it will take me home. If I say ls, I will see ftp msf admin service and user. Now let me try to go to msf admin, and if I say ls, we have this vulnerable folder in here. Let me try to go into that as well. So vulnerable, and try to run ls. As you can see, we now see the MySQL, SSL, TikiWiki, and other stuff. I believe we have seen this when we try to browse in Metasploitable machine when we first installed it. So we now actually hacked into this machine, and we can browse inside of folders as well. And in fact, we can do more than just browsing. And we're going to focus on that in the post-hacking section. Right now, we're just only focusing on hacking process only. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture, we're going to see another ports, another vulnerabilities to exploit. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to exploit another vulnerability called username map script in the Metasploitable machine that we have been working on so far. So we have a lot of results in here, we have a lot of open ports. I'm going to show you another one to exploit. Since we have completed this 21 TCP, then I'm going to move on to the others. So let me go down a little bit and try to find more information. As you can see, we have this 80 port in here which runs Apache server. Maybe it has a vulnerability as well, but 80 port actually shows us that this machine is running a web server, and we can reach those web server with running the IP address on a browser. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on that one, and I'm going to skip to the others. So you will see 80 port in a lot of examples. When you try to pen test your own system's own examples when you complete this course. Rather, I'm going to go for this 139, okay? and I'm going to search for this version here, and I'm going to paste it, and of course I'm going to add an exploit to the end. As you can see, a lot of people googled it, so we have a lot of results as well. And I'm going to go for rapid7 once more rather than exploit database. And you can use exploitdb.com as well, but as I explained before, rapid7 is bringing us the metasploitable and metasploit at the same time. So generally it is wise to use rapid7 when you have one, because the module name will be available within inside MSF console as well. I always suggest you to read those information, read this description before you try to exploit with the module. And as you can see, rather than supplying a regular username, we're going to supply some shell meta characters. Okay, so this is like a code in the username that will try to exploit those vulnerability, and we can just gather an access with this module if we try one. So let me try this. Let me open a new terminal and run MSF console to open Metasploit. And then later on, we're going to use this module and have some appropriate settings, and then go and try to exploit this vulnerability. Okay, so this is the exact same thing that we have done in the previous lecture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say use, and I'm going to paste the module name that I have copied, and of course I'm going to say show options in order to get the settings of this particular module. And here we have the R port as 139, and I'm going to set our host to be 10.025, which is my metasploitable machine's IP. So the port is already correct, 139, so I'm good to go actually. I'm going to say exploit, and it will try to hack into that machine, and as you can see, we have a shell session opened in here. So now if I say uname, I will get Linux, and I can try to browse the folders and files in here as well, like we did in the previous lecture. I can try to go to home, and I can try to go to MSF admin to see the vulnerable folder. Right now, you may think that this metasploitable machine has actually a lot of ports, a lot of misconfigurations built in. What if I come across a machine that has no vulnerabilities at all? And you're right. Later on within this course, we are going to learn social engineering. We are going to learn how to create backdoors and try to inject them on the Windows, how to make users open the backdoors exe files on Windows machines so we can gather access as well. So we're going to work with Windows machines that has no vulnerabilities at all. But now we're trying to focus on servers. We're going to focus on machines that has vulnerabilities. So don't worry about that. We're gonna come that later on. And maybe you can think that I don't understand the logic behind it. I don't understand the actual codes that are running this vulnerabilities and exploits. Of course, you can go to exploitdb or rapid7 to analyze those codes yourself, but if you don't know any programming, I wouldn't think on that either. Later on, when you learn about Python, it will make more sense to analyze and try to understand those codes. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to focus on another vulnerability to exploit. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to exploit another vulnerability called PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL vulnerability. And since we completed this, I'm going to skip this and scroll down for more. And actually, this will be exactly the same way that we have done before. So I believe you can try to Google this on your own and try to exploit this on your own. So I suggest you pause the video and go for this PostgreSQL DB 830 vulnerability. I hope you managed to get it. I'm just going to do the same thing in here. I'm going to run for exploit, and I'm going to look within the rapid7.com, within the rapid7 database. I'm going to find the related module name. So if you come here, you must read the description in order to try to understand what's going on in the background. Of course, you cannot understand the shellcode as I said, but maybe you can understand the logic behind it, okay, like we did before. It says in here that this database, this PostgreSQL, actually uses or may use this temporary directory, and if we try to upload some code to those PostgreSQL tables, then it may get run and it may create a session for us in order to hack us into. Maybe you even don't know what term SQL means, and we're going to see that later on in the SQL section or SQL section. Don't worry about that, but just try to understand that this is like a database and we're trying to upload a code in that database, and this will get run in the Linux itself and it will create a session for us. So there are a lot of exploits like this in the real life. You can find one and try to use it in your own way. So let me copy this module name and try to go back to my MSF console in order to run this exploit and in order to hack into Metasploitable machine one more time. So maybe right now you're thinking that, can I exploit every vulnerability on Metasploitable with these steps, with exactly like this going on the Rapid7? And the answer is actually no. Okay, you cannot exploit every vulnerability with an MSF console with a simple module name. And if you just Google the other open ports, if you Google how to exploit them, how to exploit those specific ports, specific versions, I believe you will get some solutions. I believe you will get some results. Sometimes you will have to use MSF console, sometimes it will suggest you to use other tools. But it is actually good to learn how to use this MSF console, so I'm showing you those specific examples. If you say show options to this payload, as you can see, we have now this rhost blank as well. So I'm going to set the rhost as 10.02.5 one more time, and this time we have other username, verbose, and database and password as well, and the port number is 5432 as in it's suggested in here, so it's good. And I'm not going to worry about this database and password and username and verbose since they are in their default values. I'm going to try and hack into the Metasploitable machine as before. And here we have the session right now. As you can see, we have a session called Meterpreter this time, and later on we're going to see how to work with these Meterpreter sessions in our post-hacking section. And don't worry about that. If you run ls, you will still see the results, but Meterpreter actually is a great session tool, great tool to interact with the hacked machine, and it gives us a lot of options than before. As you can see, we can gather more data, we can do a lot of stuff like opening the webcam of the hacked computer with Meterpreter easily. We're going to see that, but now we have completed this pen testing, introduction to pen testing section. Later on within the following section, we're going to focus on how to hack into the systems that don't have any vulnerabilities with using backdoors.
Hi! Now you know how to work with Metasploit and Metasploitable. And if you think that is this going to be our only experience in system pen testing, you're wrong. Because we're going to have more scans, more system penetration testings in the website penetration test sections. Okay? Now, I believe you know the basics of how to use scans, how to use Nmap, and how to discover some vulnerabilities and find some existing exploits to leverage that vulnerability in order to gain access. Now, if you're ready, let's move on to the next section.